Welcome to the Minutes to Win It podcast. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. With me, Russell Clay at Russell J. Clay, breaking down tonight's 7-game NBA slates. And we got a monster 450K GPP, the super sharpshooter on DK tonight, which we're going to have a ton of entries. And I'm stoked. I just want to toss in every possible line of combination and then take home 100K and then get taxed most of it.
Yeah, and not only is that a fun tournament to enter, but this is also a fun slate in terms of correlation plays and things. They just kind of, I guess, make sense tonight. Some nights you're kind of looking at all the games and maybe here, maybe there, but this actually there's a lot of sort of places that you want to attack specifically. So this is a fun slate.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at totals here, I mean, every game has a 200 total or more. There's only one blowout concern with the Clippers being favored by 15.5 points. I mean, that's kind of an iffy one if you're paying up for Clippers, guys, but still, If you're playing GPPs, it's definitely worth a look because Suns haven't been that bad.
Right, and there are some options on the Suns and sort of the lower end of the Clippers, but I don't think that should affect things too much for you tonight.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking elsewhere, I think the kind of real games to target: Atlanta, Golden State, Minnesota, Boston, Milwaukee, and LA, and even that Cleveland Detroit game. It's not bad. I'm probably going to be limiting my shares there more than any other game.
Yeah, my favorite game of the night is that Lakers Bucks game. I think there's just a ton of options on both sides, and we'll get into it. But that's definitely the one I'm targeting. And then I think sort of a contrarian. I'm not sure how many people are going to be on this sort of Heat Pacers game, but I do like them. As we've seen with Bosch out the last two games, the Heat have gone over 114 points in both games, and that only happened 2 times before this stretch. So that's definitely something to be aware of. I don't think Vegas is fully adjusted for that in the lines yet. So if Wade plays, I think that's going to change the outlook a little bit. But that is something that has shifted the last 2 games for them.
Yeah, the pace of play has definitely been on the rise just because you're throwing basically 4 to 5 smaller players who can move the ball and, they take outside jump shots. They can push the pace a little bit more. And Indiana's been a team that's been fully accountable to push the pace as well. So I definitely like that game as a contrarian, especially because it's not obvious tonight. Since it's the lowest game total of the night. So, but definitely, I mean, a 101 to 99 game is definitely going to have plenty of value. So, looking at injuries and stuff tonight, looking at the point guard position, Chris Paul has the little Q next to his name, but he is probable to go tonight. It's just a thigh bruise, so. But always, it's these NBA players. A bruise will keep him out, but he said he's probable to go tonight, so no worries there.
Right.
Kyrie Irving's looking like the iffy one. He left the game with the flu. He did not look good yesterday. I was watching that game, and he looked like he was ready to just barf all over the sideline. So I think he would be an interesting one just because if he sits, you're going to see kind of LeBron and Kevin Love take over that game. So that could be interesting.
I'd imagine his status would be confirmed if he actually did barf all over the crowd yesterday. but yeah, those two are kind of the main ones to watch. I guess getting into the higher end type of plays, are you looking at Steph Curry tonight against Atlanta?
I think I have to, in at least one lineup, because you know what? I'm going to throw out the ESPN narrative or NBA TV, whatever it's on tonight is televised. I mean, it's only a 7-point spread. It's the highest total of the nights. I mean, I have to have at least one Curry share just in case he drops a 60 burger because I don't want to be on it. Maybe he saw Anthony Davis yesterday and was like, you know what? I need to reclaim my status on the throne there.
And he's obviously not someone where the matchup really matters. He's going to get his either way, and he can really go off on anyone. So it is a little tougher of a matchup. I do think this makes it a little intriguing for Jeff Teague just in terms of the matchup. Because while he's not that quality of player, I don't think he's going to back down either. And this could get into sort of a back and forth between them a little bit. Obviously, he's not going to be able to hold up the whole game, but I do think that makes him intriguing at his price tonight.
Yeah, I mean, especially I mean, even if he plays 30 minutes, because it's kind of rare that we do see him play over 30. I mean, he's only done it 3 times in the last 10. And he's coming off injury where he says he's okay, he's ready to go. So you anticipate him just playing his normal workload. But I do like that, and I think, I mean, it's just a 7-point spread, so you got to imagine the Hawks are going to put up some points and keep up with this team. And obviously Teague, Millsap, Horford, those are kind of your main 3 guys to look at if this game stays close.
Definitely.
But yeah, staying up top, I think if you're looking at 2 guys to really pay up for cash games, I don't think I'm paying for Chris Paul as good as he's been, just because of that blowout concern. Especially with Kyle Lowry, 1,300 cheaper, and Isaiah Thomas sitting right there in much closer games. And that Boston-Minnesota game actually has a higher total than Phoenix and LA.
Yeah, Lowry's an interesting one. I'm probably looking to stack him tonight with DeRozan if I do play him. But Isaiah Thomas, another one. I mean, we're looking at both of these matchups, and sort of if you're playing Thomas, you might want to get in on some other players in that game, either on the Minnesota side or maybe someone else on the Boston side.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at, I think Thomas is kind of my first choice with Boston, and Crowder kind of being a close second.
Right.
So I think definitely, I mean, looking at that game, want to grab some pieces from it, I think Thomas is one of my favorite options.
6,600 for Reggie Jackson tonight on DraftKings. I think we were talking a little bit before we started recording. If Kyrie does play, I think that makes him a little more intriguing. If he doesn't, he's going to have to deal with Dellavedova. But I do think that's an intriguing matchup for the point guard position tonight.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at a really contrarian play, Jackson's definitely in the spots. He's put up decent numbers against Cleveland this season, averaging 19, 9, and 4 against them in 2 games. So hasn't shot the ball particularly well, but he's a guy who can do other things to well. So he kind of makes up for that scoring. But looking in that range, I mean, Dragic, Teague, Michael Carter-Williams, all in kind of favorable matchups.
Yeah.
And I think you've been on the Dragic train the last few days, and I was a day late, but obviously if no Wade
didn't matter. Yeah, you're all set. Even if you were a day late, he was taking the late registrations.
Yeah, he was. And I mean, obviously it's not a great matchup, but it's not a bad one either, especially like you mentioned, they're pushing pace. So if Wade sits, I think Dragic's in play. If Wade does play, I think Teague and Michael Carter-Williams just kind of edge him out for a little bit cheaper.
Yeah, and I put my hands together whenever I see that Lakers-Bucks matchup tonight. So, I mean, Carter-Williams at only $6K against sort of a weaker Lakers team. It's going to be tough for me to get away from that game in general tonight.
Yeah, definitely. If you're looking a little cheaper, obviously, I mean, you look at Jordan Clarkson, D'Angelo Russell, they both kicked into a bigger role, a little bit cheaper. It's not an excellent matchup for them tonight just because of Milwaukee's size in the backcourt, but I think they're kind of in play at their price, more so in tournaments.
Right. They're more price plays than sort of good matchup plays. But I do think, I mean, Clarkson's been pretty awesome of late, over 37 points in each of the last 3 games, and he's been getting the minutes. So he's cheap. So he's definitely in play tonight. I think Russell also is going to get more usage once he starts to get used to the starting role.
Yeah. And I think if you're looking, I think actually Clarkson might be a safe play in all formats. Russell more of your GPP guy.
Yeah.
One more injury to mention here. If Bayless does sit tonight, OJ Mayo is going to get a big bump in minutes, making him a nice value option at shooting guard, especially for a very cheap price tag, so he can help really open things up. But moving over to shooting guard, and there are some top options, top price guys to look at tonight. And kind of the injury concern there is D Wade. But we've kind of been on. We know what to do when Wade sits. So
right.
You like Joe Green, the spot start for pretty much bare minimum. He's been pretty close. It's really cheap, only 4K. Obviously, I can't trust him in cash games, but I think it's a tournament play. He'd be a fine punt.
Yeah, if Wade doesn't play, I mean, he obviously had a really nice game 2 games ago, and then sort of a clunker yesterday. I think he will end up falling in between there on a normal night. So I think you're looking at probably hitting value, but not getting too much over that. But he's intriguing if Wade sits.
Yeah, I mean, if you're paying up, obviously I know you like DeRozan tonight. I like the matchup. I'm not quite intrigued with paying up here. I think there are some just
Yeah.
other options I'd rather stay down in. And um, I mean, it's weird to say, but Jamal Crawford might be my favorite shooting guard of the night.
I don't remember a time when he got this much usage before, maybe like 7, 8 years ago, but they're just letting him fire away. So he's always in play in tournaments for that huge just the night he's just feeling it from early on. So I mean 40 points definitely in play for him in terms of ceiling, and he's only 5,600. So and against Phoenix. So I mean it's just a lot of things are lining up for him tonight.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen where he comes in and maybe plays 20 to 25 minutes off the bench and fires up, 10, 12 shots or so. But now he's doing it over a course of 30. And, with that limited backcourt, maybe Chris Paul doesn't even handle a full workload tonight. You would see Jamal Crawford just take over a much bigger role. So I think he's my favorite option in all formats from the Clippers side tonight, just because the blowout factor doesn't really have a concern with him at that price tag.
Right. Middleton, I do like him in cash games. I do see how his ceiling is a little capped for tournaments, and you could probably spend that money better elsewhere. But I do think he's a good bet for sort of that 35 to 40 point range tonight.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Middleton. I think I've been really surprised by his consistency over the last really month and a half. And obviously a matchup against the Lakers is going to be in play for me. Mm-hmm. So I think if you're looking at Thompson, Middleton, DeRozan, I do like DeRozan and Middleton kind of as the two options. Clay, not really. I'm not chasing that 50-point burger that he dropped the other night. So I'll pass.
And class, what have we learned?
Yes.
No guards against Boston. So Andrew
Yes.
Wiggins is out for me tonight. Rubio's out for me tonight. I think if you're going to target Minnesota, it's probably in the front court. So that's definitely one to avoid to me. I think Monte Ellis is an interesting tournament play. Probably not more than a one lineup guy, but I mean we've seen they're still running plays for him, and he's still Monte Ellis. So he's got that random big game in him.
Especially, I mean, if you look, what he's done he's been playing big minutes. So he scored 20 actual real points in the last two games, and he's taken 16, 17 field goal attempts. So I do like that. I like that call, especially at his price tag, just because he's only 400 more than guys like Devin Booker and Bryant. I think he's more of a logical threat to hit that big ceiling, although we've seen Kobe do it plenty of times. Yeah. So I like Kobe tonight in tournaments. I really do. I mean, that price tag is not bad at all.
Yeah, no, those three, Ellis, Bryant, and Jamal Crawford in that sort of 6K to 5,600 range on DraftKings. I think both of those guys are really nice bets, and I mean I think you can throw even two of them in there in a lineup if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean if you're looking at if Bayless does sit tonight, I really like Mayo. I mean, he played 37 minutes last time. Yes, he did get 5 steals, which kind of really heightened the ceilings. You don't anticipate that happening again, but even if he didn't, he would have sat with a nice 26 fantasy points. So that's really solid at that price tag. And obviously a home matchup against the Lakers is going to be favorable for him.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Muno is small forward and not a lot of injuries to deal with here. I guess you could just talk about Luol Deng and his bigger usage with Bosch out playing the 4. I like him at the 4 in this matchup. It's a nice matchup. I'm curious to see if Paul George moves over to the 4 though and takes him on. That's one
right. That would be a big concern. And I mean, I don't think this usage necessarily represents Deng getting it or sort of becoming an instantly better player than he was before. I think it just there's such a huge canyon of production that Bosch left behind and sort of what he does. And also Miami is not a better team without Bosch. This is purely just teams not knowing this new team. Once they begin to match up and understand what Miami's doing, there's going to be some major regression here. So I think that's always something to keep in mind. But yeah, I do like Deng. I mean, they couldn't bring his price up fast enough. So even at 5,800, he's still a decent value for sort of what he's been showing us.
I mean, he is the 5th highest price small forward on tonight's slate, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But there is a significant drop off from Giannis to Deng, but you're picking and choosing. I like Dang in tournaments still just because he's shown the upside. I still think it's going to be a tougher matchup against guys like George and Miles Turner. I think I'm still going to be leaning towards Jake Crowder at a real similar price tag. So it's tough because Dang's proved me. I've not played Dang. I've played one Dang maybe last game. That was it because I just don't. I know it's coming. The drop off's coming, and it's
exactly. There is regression coming. He may throw out another big game tonight, but it is going to be coming soon because teams are going to figure that out. But Paul George, that's what makes Paul George a really interesting play tonight because he is more expensive, but I think this slate kind of opens things up to where you can fit him in if you need to. And I kind of like him. I don't think he's going to be high owned, and I think this is a really good matchup for him.
Yeah, I definitely like Paul George. I mean, he's crushed Miami the last 3 times he's played. I mean, he's averaged 30 points a game against them, real points in 3 games. So, I mean, the shot hasn't been falling, but he's a guy who can rack up assists. I mean, we've seen that over the last, really, I mean, week or so. I mean, month or so. So I definitely don't mind Paul George. I think he's kind of my favorite play out of the LeBron, Carmelo, George area.
Right.
But if you're banking on that next game, keeping it close, I mean, it's going to be Melo at home.
Yeah, Melo and George are both interesting contrarian plays for tournaments tonight.
Yeah.
LeBron, a little tougher to pay up for tonight. I just don't know how much sense it makes just based on everything.
If Kyrie sits, I think he's a little bit more in play than where he was if Kyrie does play.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not a big fan of paying up for him tonight. I mean, obviously it's a logical option if he fits, but I think I'd just rather spend my money a little bit more balanced, maybe a little bit elsewhere as well. So
this Tobias Harris, Marcus Morris sort of combo, I might need one more game before I fully understand how it's going to work. I don't think they really affect each other, but I just need one more game to sort of confirm that is how I'm playing that.
I like Tobias tonight more so than Marcus Morris, just because Tobias has been playing the 4, and I mean, a matchup against Kevin Love isn't that bad. So, but it really hasn't. I mean, especially with Tolliver out, Tobias has come in. He's played bigger minutes so far, 35, 30 in the last 2 games, and then after, kind of being in that, he hasn't been a consistent minutes guy with Orlando, so it should be nice to see it in Detroit. But
yeah, and like you just mentioned, Stan Van Gundy's pretty consistent with who he gives minutes, and he gives a lot of minutes to sort of starters and guys like that. So that's officially not a concern for Harris anymore. So that's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you like those guys at that price. Obviously, it's not an ideal matchup on the slate, but there's not a lot down in that range that I'm really looking at, just because it's a tougher matchup for PJ Tucker.
How about Jeff Green YOLO game blowout? He looks awesome. You're a Celtics fan, so you know.
You want to talk about giving it another game to watch? I'm going to give it another 3 weeks to watch Jeff Green. He does. But I mean, if you're looking, I still think Wesley Johnson's the better small forward play from the Clippers, just because he's been consistently getting minutes, 31, 32, 22, and 42 over the last 4 games, and been sitting around that 20 mark, and he's a bit cheaper. But Mirza Teletovic, I think he's kind of the guy you're looking at small forward. He's a power forward on FanDuel. It's with Morris out. He's seen a nice bump in minutes, 29, 34 in the last 2 games, and the coach likes him coming off the bench as that shooting style guy to bring offense.
Yeah, no, and he's played well, and he's not just getting minutes; he's been playing well per minute as well. So, yeah, interesting player. I mean, especially in a matchup, a blowout matchup, I'm not sure that affects him that much. Like even if it is a blowout, I think he's still going to get his minutes. So,
yeah, I mean, he's probably actually going to be relied on even more to kind of bring home the scoring if they're going to really need it to keep up with the Clippers tonight. But I mean, overall, small forwards, I mean, it's kind of really top heavy. We kind of skipped over Giannis, but we like him as a nice tournament option tonight. We like the entire starting 5 and OJ Mayo against the Lakers tonight. I mean, they're all just fantastic prices for the room side.
Yeah, big time.
But anyone else you think we've missed?
No, I think that pretty much covers who I'm going to be on tonight. I mean, we always got PJ Minutes Tucker over there, but I can't do it tonight. So
Yeah, no, that perfectly explained for PJ Tucker. Moving over to power forward, as we mentioned, Chris Bosh is out. He's been ruled out. I'm not sure what his timetable is, but should be out for the foreseeable future. And other than that, I mean, it's Anthony Tolliver, which we talked about, but we talked about Tobias slipping in and playing the 4, which he can. So pretty clean slate for injuries at power forward. And
it is loaded.
Yeah, there's a lot of options. Much like if you played the slate last night, the slate that didn't include the 16-20 Anthony Davis. It was a loaded power forward slate, and it's kind of the same tonight. And Draymond Green kind of is the cherry on top at power forward tonight.
Right. This is where you start to look at sort of the correlation plays and game stacking, and this is where it really starts to make sense. So, like, you look at Draymond Green and Millsap. If Atlanta's going to keep this close, it's probably going to be Millsap, and then we mentioned Teague up top. But I mean, if you wanted to stack those 3 in a lineup with Draymond, I think that's a pretty intriguing lineup starter. I do like Green tonight if you want to pay up for him. I don't think that's sort of an awkward price for him in this matchup.
Yeah, I think he's my favorite Warriors player tonight, just price considered. Obviously, paying up over $10K for Curry is a little rough. Thompson's inconsistency for his over $7K price. I just really like the matchup for Green. I think power forward and center, wherever he plays tonight, because he should see some time at the 5 as well, with Bowie questionable and rarely going to see any minutes either. So the Hawks aren't really a big team anyway, but Green, I mean, it's just a triple-double threat, going to get his rebounds tonight because Atlanta ranks 29th, and obviously the assists are always there and points considered in this high total. Right. It just makes sense to play Green tonight.
And fantasy-wise, he has been a little bumpy of late. Like, it's kind of been a struggle, but I think the matchup is worth taking a look at tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of just checks all my boxes tonight for matchups. I mean, it's a lot. But as you mentioned, I do like Millsap. He's always kind of just a consistent play. He's going to get a big bump in the pace of this game, being at home. And I think if I want Cavs exposure, I really like Kevin Love. I mean, under the new coach, he's just been really consistent at home against Detroit. I mean, he's kind of gets a little bit of an advantage over Tobias Harris,
and he doesn't have like the upside of LeBron, obviously, but I mean, he has 15 to 18 rebound potential every night. So it's not at 7,300. He definitely has like room to sort of grow in terms of ceiling.
Yeah. I mean, if you look when he's played over 30 minutes, I mean, he's right in that 40 to 45 fantasy point range. And against some good teams. I mean, if you look at the last time he played Detroit, he went 29-6. So in 37 minutes, he should be relied on heavily again tonight. So I really like that price tag for what he can bring to the table.
Porzingis is I don't like that matchup for him. Plus all the matchups around, like all the players around him. I'm probably full out fading him tonight. Same for you.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, Porzingis is always kind of an intriguing GPP play, but not tonight, not this matchup, not that price tag with the other guys around him, and especially once we go to this lower range where we got Gordon Payne, Julius Randle, and Jabari Parker all in play, and it just makes things so much more tough for GPPs because you're going to want to diversify. You're not paying up really for these guys, so it's kind of nice.
But you kind of want to make a lineup with all 3, but then you're like, no, but then you're like, yeah. So
I mean, you can't on FanDuel put all 3 of those power forwards in and feel good about it. So
I mean, Parker's actually been borderline dominant price considered over the last few games, and I'm wondering if that's just going to continue. I don't think he's going to see quite the minutes that he's seen, but this might be the beginning of sort of Jabari Parker sort of breaking out in the NBA, you know?
It could be. I mean, if you look, I mean, his minutes, yes. I mean, they've been sky high, but his rebound rates have been, much improved. I mean, 13, 11, and 9 over the last 3 games. No defensive stats, and he's still putting up over 40 fantasy points, which is impressive. So, obviously, a matchup against the Lakers, they rank 27th in rebounding. You expect a double-double tonight. I think he's a safe cash game option.
Yeah, absolutely. So another stack, the Dang Town stack against Boston. Their front court has obviously sort of struggled this year. And I mean, both of those guys, I could see Dang going for 40 fantasy points tonight, like without an issue.
Yeah, I mean, these guys could easily combine for 90 fantasy points between the two of them. I mean, it's definitely possible. I think that's the upside you're looking for. And I think 80 is probably the more likable reason if, we're hitting a real top ceiling if we're being realistic. But
that totally just made something click for me. What'd you mention Anthony Davis scored? You said 93.
93 DK points yesterday.
It's going to be so exciting when he's 60% owned next game he plays, and then he gets hurt in the first quarter.
Yes, I know.
So much fun.
He's going to go back to he just scores 34 fantasy points because all he does is just go 20 and 6. He's playing the Wizards, so we'll talk about him tomorrow. But
yeah, that's definitely happening. I mean, those are such strong options, though, and we didn't really talk about Randall, but he's a really strong option as well. I don't know that I want to go lower. Is there anyone lower that you see?
No, not at all. I mean, I think Jabari Parker's the lowest I'm going to go at power forward tonight.
They're just such strong options there. Even if something does open up, I don't know that it would make sense to go below them because they're such good values. Yeah,
I mean, it's just with the stats of tonight's slate. I mean, I'm not really intrigued with paying up for many superstars like LeBron or Curry or even Paul. So I think it should just be no problem for me finding deep value. And I think hopefully if Bayless hits Mayo is going to be that deep value piece. And there's a guy at center who I like at DK who we'll talk about in a few minutes.
Yeah.
So we'll just transition over to center here. And Karl Anthony Towns is the top play of the night for me.
Ooh. As in overall or for center?
Not overall, but let's just look at center and just he's the top play at center. Not overall.
You like how I tried to snake you into a super hot take? All right, that's fine.
He's a great play. He's a top 3 play tonight. I'll give you that overall.
Yeah, no, and I mean, the upside is there, the matchup's there. The price is still, I mean, it's high, but it's not crazy. It's the same range as Paul George. And I think from a floor standpoint, he's definitely got a higher floor. So I love him in cash games tonight, and he's clearly a tournament play as well, a super strong option.
Yeah, I mean, at this Boston front court, they rank 20th at rebounding. He's going up against guys like Sullinger, Zeller, who might think Amir Johnson. I mean, he's going up against 3 guys that just haven't defended well down low. Towns is going to be able to – he's just too versatile for the Boston front court. So I like Towns, especially tonight. And I think that kind of makes all the other guys in that price range great GPP plays if maybe you're hoping Towns gets into foul trouble or just doesn't play that well.
Drummond is always kind of that GPP play, but his price, I mean, it's kind of been going down a little bit, and kind of interesting against Cleveland tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think on DK where he's only 500 less, he's like a great contrarian pivot because you're kind of, I mean, my logic is I'm just going to pay up for Towns. I don't see myself playing for, I think that's going to be the consensus.
Right, and I am too. It's just like, it just makes you think for a second before you plug Towns into all your lineups.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that, I mean, Drummond's obviously a 20-20 threat night in and night out, and in a high-scoring game like that, he's another guy, if you're banking on keeping this game close, it's going to be with Drummond. So, I mean, hopefully he can get his offensive games right tonight, which has always kind of been a concern.
Right. DeAndre Jordan's sort of in that same frame of reference, probably a little higher floor, actually. So I think I do like Jordan price considered over Drummond, but not over Towns. So
yeah, no, I'm definitely with you there, and especially on FanDuel where, I mean, Jordan's only $200 less. I think on DK where he's, basically he's $900 cheaper. It's kind of a nice move, nice little save if you need to bump up somewhere else. But we saw Whiteside go off for just a monster 25 and 23 game in just 29 minutes, which is just unreal. His fantasy points per minute just is scary.
Jokic-esque.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I mean, he has crazy upside. I mean, a lot of these centers, just because of where they play on the floor, have nice upside. But yeah, he's an interesting tournament play. But I mean, that's a pretty nice top four when you really start to look at it. But Towns just kind of, the matchup just bumps him ahead a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys in that range where you're kind of maybe hoping two of the four kind of just don't have as good as a night, and you really nail your centers, because I think that is kind of going to be a difference maker, because there are four in play, five if you consider Greg Monroe, who gets a nice matchup, as we've been talking about, against the Lakers the entire night. But
Greg, the sixth man Monroe.
Yeah, it doesn't matter that he's come off the bench. He's still seen 30-plus minutes in the last 4 games. So he's went over for 50 DK points in 2 of those games. So he definitely has big upside, especially at just 7,100. So one guy that caught my eye, and that's a guy you yelled out a couple weeks ago, that's Valanciunas.
Still capitalized in my my notes. I kind of just left it there. But yeah, no, he's 3
minutes. So.
Yeah, he's actually playing minutes now, and I mean, he's always been kind of the guy that can come in and produce per minute, but finally getting some minutes here.
Yeah, I mean, I like that call, that 6,100 spot. Another guy kind of in a similar range is Jared Sullinger, 5,700. Mm-hmm. Wasn't needed much against Denver just because they went smaller a little bit later in the game. And we've seen him when he's played against bigger teams. Obviously, the 2 before that against Utah and the Clippers, he's more around the 30 mark. He's another great fantasy points per minute guy. I mean, 11 rebounds in the last 4 games apiece there. So double-double.
A recent example where he kind of got smoked, but he was really good fantasy-wise, was the Clippers. DeAndre Jordan went off in that game, but I mean, Sullinger did as well. He got 49 fantasy points that night. So even in matchups he should get dominated in, he's still a good fantasy option and kind of an interesting correlation play.
Yeah, definitely. If you're looking at some injuries tonight, Andrew Bogut questionable with the sore Achilles. Didn't play last game, and I don't expect him to tonight. He's just the guy who's always seems to be injured. He's kind of out of play anyway. It doesn't really affect anyone just because I think Draymond Green's going to be the guy who just slides over to the 5 and they'll play a little bit of small ball with Iggy and Barnes at the 4 and the 3. So I don't think it's going to be a Mo Spades night, as we all love every now and then, but I'll pass there.
I think if you are a DFS player, you at least scroll down and you go, Maurice Spades? And then you slide back up. But yeah, no.
It doesn't matter what situation it is. You just – Mo Spades. You like Mo Spades. You just like yelling Mo Spades, Mo Buckets, like, you know.
But no, this kind of just makes it easier to go on to one of the guys that you were on tonight quite a bit, Alex Len for Phoenix. I guess you want to talk about him for a minute.
Yeah, if Chandler does sit tonight, he was ruled out. He's dealing with a sprained shoulder. He only played 8 minutes against Houston. Len becomes a really interesting play, and it's borderline cash on DK. I think you can throw him at the utility spot if you need to pay up for someone else, because when he's seen over 20 minutes, he's been great fantasy production-wise. And against this team that doesn't rebound the ball well, they struggled against centers all season. He's going to be needed out there, so I think Len's a pretty interesting play in all formats.
Yeah, and we differ slightly. I just am a little concerned in terms of cash games, but I love him as a tournament play. I think he's great upside. I'd say most likely he's going to hit value, and there's a good chance that he goes way above that. I'm just a little I don't have a word for it, but fill in your description word of uncomfortable there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're looking a 17 and 13 point game in the span of 2/30s is going to give you an uncomfortable feeling. But I mean, obviously, with no Chandler, with the front court that's going to need some size against Jordan, Len would kind of be that guy. And
he's really the only guy down there that has the upside to make it worth it to go against those higher priced options, I think.
Yeah, I think if you are paying down, Len's just the easy choice because there's not a
Yeah.
lot of guys, and we've mentioned the stack center position tonight, so he's just a filler kind of at that utility role if you want to roster 2 centers to help pay up for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to wrap things up here with the minutes to win it. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.